The ships came on a Tuesday morning, Tai-ho. Park was eating breakfast at the airbase in Gwangju when the alarm started screaming. He dropped his rice bowl and ran to the window. The sky, which had been clear and blue just moments ago, was now filled with dark shapes. Hundreds of them. They moved like nothing he had ever seen before. Not planes. Not missiles. Something else entirely. All pilots to stations. The voice on the speakers was shaking. "This is not a drill." Tai-ho ran. His boots pounded against the concrete as he sprinted toward the hangars. Around him, other pilots were doing the same. Some were still in their sleeping clothes. Nobody understood what was happening. Nobody had time to ask across the world. The Galactic Council watched from their observation station beyond the edge of the solar system. The station was old, built long before humans had learned to make fire. It existed to monitor primitive species, to watch them grow, to decide when they were ready to join the greater community of the galaxy. Ambassador Kel of the Oravani delegation stood before the main viewing screen. Her 4 eyes blinked slowly as she studied the blue and green planet below. Earth, the humans called it. A small world, unimportant. The species living there had only recently discovered how to leave their own atmosphere. They had no shields. No warships. No knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. "The Velthari have begun their assault," said Delegate Morven of the Helix Collective. His voice carried no emotion. 200 warships. Standard invasion protocol. "This seems excessive," Kel said quietly. "The humans cannot fight back. The Velthari enjoy excess." Morven turned away from the screen. "It will be over within hours. Perhaps we should discuss more important matters." Kel did not turn away. She kept watching. On Earth. The city of Seoul was burning. The Velthari ships had descended without warning, without demands, without any attempt at communication. They simply arrived and began to destroy. Buildings collapsed under weapons that humans had no names for. Bridges melted. The Han River boiled. Unikong was in her laboratory at Keast when the ceiling cracked open above her. She threw herself under her desk as dust and debris rained down. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red. Out. Her director was shouting. "Underground shelters? Now." Una grabbed her laptop and the hard drive containing her research. Years of work on energy frequency manipulation. It had seemed so abstract, so theoretical. Now, as she ran through collapsing hallways, she wondered if any of it would matter. The shelters were already filling with people. Students, professors, staff. Their faces were pale with shock. Some were crying. Others simply stared at nothing, unable to process what was happening to their world. Una found a corner and opened her laptop. The news feeds were chaos. Every major city was under attack. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, the Velthari were everywhere. And they were killing without mercy. In Gwangju, Tai-ho finally reached his fighter jet. His hands were shaking as he climbed into the cockpit. The radio was filled with voices, all talking over each other. Commands, screams, static. "All units. This is command," a calm voice cut through the noise. "Enemy targets are approaching from the north. Engage at will." Repeat, engage at will. Tai-ho had trained for years. He had run simulations. He had practiced formations. But nothing had prepared him for this. The enemy ships were massive, their hulls covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and move. They did not fly like aircraft. They moved like predators, smooth and patient. He pulled back on the stick and lifted into the air. Around him, other jets were doing the same. A squadron of 12. Against 200 alien warships, it did not seem like enough. It was not enough, but they flew anyway. The Galactic Council continued to watch. "Curious," Kel said softly. "They are launching aircraft." Morven glanced at the screen with mild interest. "Primitive combustion engines against Velthari shields. It is pointless." "Yes," Kel agreed. "But they are doing it anyway." On the main screen, the human aircraft engaged the Velthari forces. The results were predictable. Energy beams cut through metal like paper. Jets exploded in midair, their pilots dying before they could even scream. But the humans kept coming. For every jet that fell, another took its place. From bases across the country, across the continent, across the world. More aircraft rose into the sky, helicopters, cargo planes modified with weapons, civilian aircraft carrying bombs. It was desperate. It was foolish. It was absolutely hopeless. And yet, Kel noticed something. The Velthari ships, which should have been advancing freely, were slowing down. Not because of damage. The human weapons could barely scratch their shields. But because the Velthari pilots were confused, they had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had faced armies with superior technology. But they had never faced an enemy that refused to accept defeat. High General Torvas stood on the bridge of his command ship and watched the chaos below with growing irritation. This should have been simple. Earth was weak. Earth was primitive. Earth should have surrendered the moment his ships appeared. Instead, his communication officers were reporting strange activity. Human military frequencies were lighting up across the planet, not with panic, not with surrender requests, but with coordination, strategies, battle plans. They are organizing, his tactical officer reported, unable to hide his surprise. Impossible, Torvas growled. They have no central command. Our initial strikes destroyed their leadership structures. Nevertheless, General, they are adapting. Torvas stared at the planet below. Fires burned across every continent. Millions of humans were already dead. And yet, the survivors were not running. They were fighting back with everything they had. He activated the broadcast system and spoke in the human language his translators had prepared. People of Earth. I am High General Torvas of the Velthari Empire. Your resistance is meaningless. Surrender now, and some of you may be permitted to live. He waited for a response. For the begging, for the fear, instead, he received a single transmission. It came from a human aircraft, badly damaged, trailing smoke as it flew directly toward his command ship. The pilot's voice was calm, almost peaceful. My name is Taiho Park, the human said, and we do not surrender. The jet struck the ship's shield and exploded. The shield held, of course. The attack caused no damage at all. But across the Galactic Council observation station, Ambassador Kel felt something she had not felt in centuries. A small, cold thread of fear. What are these creatures? She whispered. No one answered, because no one knew. Taiho Park did not die. His ejection seat had fired at the last moment. Throwing him clear before his jet struck the Velthari shield, he fell through burning sky, his parachute opening automatically, and landed in the ruins of a city he no longer recognized. For 3 hours, he walked through smoke and fire. He passed bodies. He passed crying children. He passed buildings that had stood for centuries, now reduced to ash and memory. He did not stop. He could not stop. There was still a war to fight. By the end of the first day, the Velthari controlled the skies. Their ground forces had landed in every major population center. Massive soldiers in armored suits, carrying weapons that could vaporize a human from 100 meters away. They marched through streets like conquerors. Expecting the surviving humans to bow down, they did not understand what they had awakened. In Busan, Sergeant Minjio crouched behind a collapsed wall with what remained of her unit. 12 Marines, armed with rifles that seemed like toys compared to Velthari weapons. They had been fighting for 18 hours without rest. 3 of them were wounded. All of them were afraid, but none of them were ready to quit. Listen to me, Minji said, her voice low and steady. Those things out there, they think we are weak. They think we will run. They are wrong. She pulled a small device from her pocket. A civilian drone, the kind used for photography. Except she had spent the last 2 hours attaching explosives to it. We cannot beat them in a straight fight, she continued. So we will not fight straight. We will hit them where they do not expect. We will make them bleed for every step they take on our soil. Her Marines nodded. They understood. This was not war as they had trained for it. This was survival. And humans had been surviving against impossible odds for thousands of years. The drone lifted into the air, silent and small. The Velthari patrol never saw it coming. The explosion killed 3 of them and scattered the rest. Before they could regroup, Minji and her unit were already gone, vanishing into the ruins like ghosts. Across the ocean, in what remained of Seoul, Jinho-beek was doing a different kind of fighting. He had been a hacker before the invasion. A troublemaker, according to the government. Someone who broke into systems he should not have broken into, who asked questions he should not have asked. When the Velthari came, most people ran for the shelters. Junho ran for the crash sites. He found a downed Velthari dropship in the wreckage of Gangnam. Its crew was dead, killed by the impact. But its computers were still active, still humming with alien power. Junho did not know the Velthari language. He did not understand their technology. But code was code, and he had been reading code since he was 12 years old. It took him 6 hours. 6 hours of trial and error, of guessing, of making mistakes that could have killed him. But by the end of it, he had extracted something valuable. Navigation data, flight patterns, communication frequencies. He uploaded everything to a server that was still somehow running, and sent the link to every military address he could find, within hours. Human forces around the world were using Velthari communication codes to listen to enemy transmissions. For the first time, they knew where the aliens were going before they got there. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing unease. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Kell said. "Studying the data streams from Earth, their casualty rate is catastrophic. They have lost millions, and yet their resistance is intensifying." Delegate Morvan shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps they simply do not understand how hopeless their situation is. No. Kell shook her head slowly. They understand. Look at their communications. They know they are dying. They know they cannot win. And they are fighting anyway. She pulled up a recording from a human broadcast, a woman's voice calm and clear, speaking over a radio frequency that covered most of Asia. "To all survivors," the woman said. "This is Dr. Yunikong at the Daejin Research Facility. We have captured enemy equipment. We are studying it. We are learning. Hold on. Keep fighting. We will find a way." The broadcast repeated every hour on the hour. Across the planet, humans heard it and took hope. They did not know if it was true. They did not know if this Dr. Kang could actually do what she promised, but they believed, because they had nothing else left. In her underground bunker, Yuno worked without sleep. The Velthari energy cell she had captured was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its power output was 1,000 times greater than the best human technology. Its efficiency defied known physics, but it had a weakness. Every energy system had a frequency, a resonance point where it operated at peak efficiency, and where it could be disrupted. Yuna found that frequency on the 3rd day. She did not have time to celebrate. She did not have time to rest. She simply wrote down her findings, sent them to every research facility still standing, and moved on to the next problem. Meanwhile, the Velthari were beginning to worry. High General Torvus reviewed the casualty reports with a frown that was deepening by the hour. 22% losses among ground forces. Not from superior weapons. Not from tactical brilliance. But from ambushes, traps, explosives, hidden in buildings. Attacks that came from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. The humans were fighting like animals. No, worse than animals. Animals eventually recognized when they were beaten. Humans did not seem to have that instinct. "Increase orbital support," Torvus ordered. "If they will not surrender, we will burn them out." But even as he gave the order, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Doubt on the observation station? Ambassador Kell was reviewing footage from the surface. One recording in particular had caught her attention. A human soldier, clearly wounded, charging directly at a Velthari combat mech. The soldier had no chance. The mech was twice his size, armed with weapons that could level a building. The human attacked anyway. He climbed onto the mech with bare hands, found a gap in its armor, and shoved a grenade inside. The explosion killed them both. Kel watched the recording 3 times. Each time, she felt that cold thread of fear growing stronger. What are they? She whispered to herself. What drives them? She thought about all the species the Council had observed over the millennia. Thousands of civilizations, each unique in their own way. But none of them were like this. None of them had this capacity for defiance, this refusal to accept the inevitable. She thought about the old records, ancient histories that most delegates considered myths, stories of species that had been too dangerous to allow into the galaxy, species that had been quarantined, contained, or destroyed before they could spread. For the first time, she wondered if humanity might be one of those species, and for the first time, she wondered if the Velthari had made a terrible mistake. High General Torvas made his decision on the 7th day of the invasion. The humans would not break. He had burned their cities. He had killed their leaders. He had demonstrated power beyond anything their primitive civilization could comprehend. And still they fought. Still they resisted. Still they refused to kneel very well. If they would not surrender, he would teach them the price of defiance. He chose Busan, a coastal city, still partially intact, still serving as a center of human resistance. His ships moved into position above it. His officers prepared the orbital bombardment systems. General, his tactical officer said carefully, this will kill hundreds of thousands of civilians. Perhaps millions. Is this truly necessary? Torvas did not hesitate. It is necessary for them to understand. One demonstration. One city turned to glass, and the rest will finally accept their fate. The weapons fired from space. It looked almost beautiful. Beams of pure energy, bright as small suns, descending from orbit. They struck the city in perfect formation. Each impact point calculated for maximum destruction. Busan died in 17 seconds. When the light faded, there was nothing left. No buildings, no streets, no people. Just a crater of melted stone and scorched earth, still glowing with residual heat. Torvas waited for the human response. He expected terror. He expected pleas for mercy. He expected the broadcasts to finally carry the sounds of surrender. Instead, he heard music. Across every human frequency, a song was playing. An old song by human standards. Something about not giving up, about standing strong, about fighting until the very end. It played over images of the destroyed city. It played over lists of the dead. It played without stopping, without pausing, without any sign of the fear that Torvas had hoped to create, and then the counterattacks began. Commander Doyon, Shin had been beneath the waves when Busan was destroyed. His submarine, the Dokdo, had been running silent for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. He felt the shockwave through the water. He knew what it meant without being told. His home was gone. His family was gone. Everything he had known and loved had been turned to ash. He gathered his crew in the narrow corridor of the submarine. 47 men and women, all looking at him with eyes full of grief and rage. I will not lie to you, Doyon said. Our mission has changed. We were supposed to gather intelligence, to stay hidden, to survive. He paused. I am no longer interested in surviving, he pointed to the tactical screen. A Velthari carrier group, floating above what had once been the Korea Strait. Those are the ships that killed our city. Our orders say nothing about attacking them. Our weapons are not designed for fighting enemies like this. We will probably die. He looked at each of his crew members in turn. Who wants to live forever? No one spoke. No one needed to. Doyon smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had already accepted his death and decided to make it mean something. Load the nuclear torpedoes, he ordered. All of them. On the surface, Sergeant Minjio was still alive. She should not have been. Her unit had been caught in the outer edge of the bombardment, close enough to feel the heat, close enough to watch the city disappear. 3 of her Marines had died instantly. The rest were badly burned, including Mingi herself. She lay in the ruins, her skin screaming with pain, and stared at the sky where Busan used to be. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply lay there, feeling the rage build inside her, like a fire that would never go out. After an hour, she stood up. Her legs did not want to work. She made them work anyway. She found her rifle. She checked its ammunition. She started walking by nightfall. She had gathered 47 survivors. Civilians mostly. A few soldiers from shattered units, an old man who had been a sniper 50 years ago. A teenage girl who had never held a weapon before yesterday. Minji looked at them. They looked back at her. I am going to kill Veltheri, she said simply. Anyone who wants to help? Follow me. Anyone who wants to hide, I understand. But hiding will not save you. Nothing will save you except fighting. All 47 followed her. Indojin Unikong received the news of Busan with tears streaming down her face. She had friends there. Family there. People she would never see again. But she did not stop working. She could not stop working. Not now. Not when she was so close. Her frequency disruptor was nearly complete. A device that could interfere with Veltheri's shield generators, that could make their armor vulnerable, could finally give humanity a chance to hurt them back. She worked through the night. She worked through the pain. She worked through the grief that threatened to swallow her whole. By morning, she had a working prototype. Send the specifications to every factory still operating, she told her assistant. Every workshop, every garage. I do not care if they have to build these things out of spare parts and hope. Get them into production now. The Galactic Council was in emergency session. This is becoming problematic, Delegate Morven said, his voice tight with something that might have been concern. The Veltheri were supposed to conclude this operation within days. It has been a week. Their casualty rate is unprecedented. Perhaps they underestimated the humans, another delegate suggested. Clearly they did. The question is, what we do about it. Ambassador Kell stood at the edge of the chamber, watching the debate with growing unease. She had been reviewing human history in the archives. What she found there had disturbed her more than she wanted to admit. Humans were not like other species. They did not fight for territory or resources or survival alone. They fought for concepts. Abstract ideas like honor and revenge and spite. They would destroy themselves rather than surrender to an enemy they hated. They would burn their own cities rather than let them be conquered. And when they were pushed too far, when they were hurt too deeply, they became something else entirely. Something that did not negotiate. Something that did not forgive. She thought about Busan, about the millions of dead, about the music that was still playing on human frequencies, defiant and unbroken. The Veltheri had wanted to break human spirit. Instead, they had forged it into something harder than steel. We should intervene, Kell said suddenly. The chamber went silent. Every eye turned to her. Intervene. Morven sounded incredulous. On whose side? Kell did not answer immediately. She was looking at the tactical display, at the small blue planet that was tearing itself apart in its refusal to surrender. I am not certain it matters anymore, she said quietly. But I believe we have made an error. A terrible error. We assumed the Veltheri would win quickly. We assumed the humans would submit. We assumed wrong. She looked at the latest casualty reports. The Veltheri were still winning, technically. They still held orbital superiority. They still had better weapons, better ships, better everything. But they were bleeding. They were losing soldiers faster than they had in any campaign in their history. And the humans showed no sign of stopping. If this continues, Kell said, one of two things will happen. Either the Veltheri will win through total extermination and create a martyr species that the galaxy will never forget, or the humans will somehow survive and they will remember what was done to them. She paused. Neither outcome is acceptable. Deep beneath the Korea Strait, Commander Doyen Shin gave his final order. Fire all tubes. The nuclear torpedoes launched into darkness, seeking their targets with patient, mechanical precision. The Veltheri carrier never saw them coming. The explosion lit up the ocean for 50 kilometers and on the Veltheri command ship. High General Torvas received a message from his emperor. It contained a single word that had never been sent to a Veltheri commander in the field. Reinforcements for the first time in the history of the Empire, were calling for help. The second week of the war began with something the Velthari had never experienced before. They started losing. It happened slowly at first. A patrol ambushed here. A supply convoy destroyed there. Isolated incidents that the commanders dismissed as the desperate actions of a dying species. But the incidents kept multiplying. The losses kept mounting. And then the humans unveiled their new weapons. Una. Kong's frequency disruptors changed. Everything the first field test happened outside what remained of Tokyo, a Velthari, armored. Column was advancing through the ruins, confident in their invincibility. Their shields had stopped every human weapon thrown at them for 2 weeks. They had no reason to expect anything different. The disruptor pulse hit them like an invisible wave. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then their shields flickered, stuttered, died. The Japanese self-defense forces opened fire. Velthari soldiers, suddenly exposed, fell by the dozens. Their armor, which had seemed impenetrable, now showed gaps and weaknesses. Human bullets found those gaps. Human explosives exploited those weaknesses. When the battle ended, 47 Velthari were dead. Human casualties, 12. The footage spread across the planet within hours. For the first time since the invasion began, humans were not just surviving. They were winning. Taiho Park watched the video in a makeshift command center outside Gwangju. He had spent the last week gathering survivors, organizing resistance cells, preparing for a moment like this. Now that moment had arrived, and he was ready. "General Yu," he said into his radio, "this is Park. I have confirmation. The disruptors work." General Hannah Yu sat in a bunker somewhere beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province. She had taken command of Unified Asian Operations after the original commanders had been killed in the first wave of attacks. She was 63 years old, a veteran of conflicts that seemed trivial now, and the calmest person most of her staff had ever met. "Understood, Captain Park," she replied. Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was something humans had never attempted before. A coordinated global counteroffensive. Using captured technology, improvised weapons. And the sheer, stubborn fury of a species that refused to die, it began at dawn across the planet. Human forces attacked simultaneously. In Europe, resistance fighters destroyed a Velthari communications hub using captured energy weapons. In South America, submarines sank 3 more Velthari ships, using tactics that Doyon Shin had pioneered before his death. In Africa, civilian pilots flew crop dusters, loaded with explosives, into enemy positions. Their last words broadcast lived to the world, but the most audacious attack came from Taiho Park. The Velthari had established their main command hub in a massive ship hovering above the ruins of Beijing. From there, High General Torvas coordinated the invasion, confident that no human force could reach him. He was 3 kilometers above the surface, surrounded by fighter escorts, protected by the most advanced shields in the Empire. Taiho intended to prove him wrong. For the past week, human engineers had been working on a captured Velthari fighter. They did not fully understand its systems. They could barely read its controls. But they had learned enough to make it fly, and that was all Taiho needed. He climbed into the alien cockpit at midnight. The controls felt wrong under his hands, designed for fingers that bent differently than human fingers. The displays showed symbols he could not read. The seat was too large, built for a body twice his size. None of that mattered. "This is Park," he said over the radio. "I am launching now. If I do not return, tell my mother I died well." The fighter rose into the night sky. The Velthari escorts did not notice him at first. His ship broadcast friendly identification codes, stolen from the wreckage of 100 crashes. By the time they realized something was wrong, he was already inside their formation. Taiho fired everything he had. The command ship shuddered under the impact. Its shields held, but barely. Alarms screamed on its bridge. Crew members scrambled to their stations. And High General Torvas, for the first time in his career, felt fear. "Destroy that ship," he screamed. "Destroy it now." But Taiho was already gone, diving back toward the surface with Velthary fighters on his tail. He led them through the ruins of Beijing, weaving between collapsed skyscrapers, ducking under fallen bridges. The alien pilots were good, but they did not know this terrain. They did not understand that humans had been fighting each other in cities for thousands of years. One by one, the pursuers crashed. One by one, they learned why humans were so hard to kill. Taiho landed his stolen fighter in a rice paddy outside the city. By the time he climbed out, he was laughing. He could not help it. He had just attacked the Velthary command ship and survived. He had proven that the invaders were not invincible. The message spread like wildfire in her bunker. Colonel Minjio received word of the attack while planning her next operation. She had been promoted 3 times in the past week, not through ceremony, but through necessity. Every officer above her had died. Now she commanded the largest guerrilla force in Korea, and she intended to use it. The command ship is damaged, her intelligence officer reported. Their coordination is disrupted. This is our chance. Mingi nodded. She had been waiting for this moment, planning for it, dreaming of it through sleepless nights filled with memories of Busan. Target the forward bases, she ordered. All of them. Hit them before they can regroup. Her forces moved like shadows through the night. 300 fighters armed with disruptor-equipped weapons and the burning desire for revenge. They struck 12 Velthary positions in 6 hours, killing enemy soldiers who were still confused by the chaos above. By morning, the Velthary had lost control of the Korean peninsula, on the Galactic Council observation station. Ambassador Kell watched the battle reports with something approaching awe. They are winning, she said softly. They are actually winning. Delegate Morvan stood beside her, his earlier confidence completely gone. This is impossible. The Velthary have never lost a ground campaign. Never. They have never fought humans before. Kell pulled up the latest data. Human casualties were still enormous. Cities lay in ruins. Millions were dead. But the tide had turned. The Velthary were retreating on every front, pulling back to orbital positions, abandoning the ground they had paid so dearly to take. What do we do? Morvan asked. Kell did not answer immediately. She was thinking about the future. About what would happen when this war ended. About what humanity would become after everything they had suffered. She thought about Taiho Park, flying an alien ship into the heart of enemy command. About Minjio, leading broken soldiers to impossible victories. About Unikong, turning captured technology into weapons in a matter of days. About Doyan Shin, sacrificing himself to destroy an enemy fleet. These were not the actions of a primitive species. These were the actions of predators. Of survivors. Of something the galaxy had never seen before. We do nothing, Kell said finally. It is too late for intervention. Whatever happens next, we have lost the right to influence it. She looked at the blue planet, still burning, still fighting, still refusing to submit. We can only watch, she continued, and pray that when the humans finally reach the stars, they remember who their enemies were, and who stood by and did nothing. On Earth, High General Torvas received word that reinforcements would not arrive for another month. His fleet was crippled. His ground forces were shattered. His communications were compromised. For the first time in his career, he gave an order he had never imagined giving. All forces, retreat to orbit. Prepare for withdrawal. The Velthary Empire was leaving Earth, but they were not leaving victorious. They were running. From a species they had dismissed as primitive, from a people they had tried to exterminate, from humans. The last Velthary ship left Earth's orbit on a cold morning in October. From the ground, Minjio watched it go. She stood in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city, surrounded by soldiers who had become her family over 3 weeks of blood and fire. Her face was scarred now, burned by weapons that should have killed her. Her left arm hung in a sling broken in 3 places. She had not slept in 4 days, but she was alive, and they were leaving. We won, someone said beside her. A young soldier, barely old enough to hold a rifle. He sounded like he did not believe his own words. We survived, Minji corrected him. That is not the same thing. She turned away from the sky and looked at the destruction around her. Millions were dead. Cities had been erased from existence. The world would never be the same, but humanity had endured. And that was something no one in the galaxy had expected. In Geneva, the remnants of Earth's governments gathered to discuss what came next. The old divisions seemed meaningless now. Borders, rivalries, ancient hatreds, all of it had burned away in the fire of invasion. What remained was a single species, united by trauma, bound together by the simple fact of survival. Dr. Unikong was there, presenting the scientific community that had worked miracles during the war. She looked exhausted. They all did. But there was steel in her eyes now, forged in those desperate days when she had turned enemy technology into weapons. We have recovered significant Velthari technology, she reported to the assembly. Propulsion systems, energy generation, shield technology. With time and resources, we can reverse engineer all of it. Someone asked why UNA did not hesitate. To make sure this never happens again? To build ships that can reach other worlds. To show the galaxy that Earth is not weak, that we will never be victims again. The room was silent. They all understood what she was proposing. Humanity's first steps into the stars would not be peaceful exploration. They would be armed deterrence. A message to anyone who might think about attacking. Earth again, no one objected. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. 3 days later, Ambassador Kell stood before the assembled delegates. Her presentation displayed on screens throughout the chamber. The data was clear. The implications were terrifying. The Velthari have retreated, she began. Their invasion force has been effectively destroyed. High General Torvas has been recalled to face judgment for his failure. This is the first time in recorded history that the Velthari Empire has lost a planetary campaign. Murmurs filled the chamber. Delegates who had dismissed Earth as irrelevant were now paying attention. More importantly, Kell continued, the humans are already adapting Velthari technology. Our projections suggest they will achieve interstellar capability within 5 to 10 years, possibly sooner. Then we must act, one delegate said urgently. Contain them before they spread. How? Kell asked simply. They just defeated the Velthari. Who among us has the military strength to stop them? Silence. The question answered itself. We have another option, Kell said. We can welcome them. Offer them membership in the council. Make them our allies instead of our enemies. After we stood by and watched them nearly die, another delegate protested. They will never trust us. Perhaps not, but they may accept us. Humans are practical creatures. They understand power. They understand alliances. If we approach them with respect, if we treat them as equals, we may be able to build something. She paused. And if we do not, we will spend the next century wondering when they will come for us. Earth. Taiho Park stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar vessel. The ship had been built from Velthari wreckage, reconstructed by engineers who had learned more in 3 weeks than they had in 3 decades. It was ugly. It was improvised. Some of its systems still displayed alien symbols that no one could read. But it flew. And that was enough. Admiral Park, his communications officer, said. We are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They wish to discuss terms. Admiral. The title still felt strange. 3 weeks ago, he had been a captain, flying an outdated jet against alien warships. Now he commanded humanity's entire space force, all 6 ships of it. Put them through, he ordered. Ambassador Kell's face appeared on the view screen. She looked tired, Taiho thought. Almost as tired as he felt. Admiral Park, she said formally. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend greetings to humanity. We wish to discuss the possibility of peaceful relations between our peoples. Taiho considered his response carefully. Beside him, Unikong stood silently, her presence a reminder of everything they had lost and everything they had gained. We received your greetings during the invasion, Taiho said evenly. They consisted of silence while our cities burned. Kell did not flinch. You are correct. The council chose not to intervene. We believe the outcome was predetermined. We were wrong. You were wrong. Taiho let the words hang in the air. Millions of our people died while you watched, and now you want peace. Now we want understanding. Kel's voice was soft but steady. We underestimated humanity. We will not make that mistake again. The question is whether we move forward as partners or as adversaries. Taiho thought about the dead, about Busan turned to glass, about friends who had died in burning aircraft, in flooded submarines, in ruined cities. About everything humanity had sacrificed to survive. He thought about revenge, about turning these new ships toward the Council, toward the Velthri, toward everyone who had hurt them. Then he thought about the future, about children who deserved to grow up in a galaxy where Earth was respected, about the endless possibilities that awaited among the stars. We will send a delegation, he said finally. Dr. Unikong will speak for humanity. She will present our terms. And what are your terms? Taiho looked at Yuna. She stepped forward, her voice clear and calm. Recognition of Earth as a sovereign power. Reparations for the damage caused by the Velthri invasion. A permanent seat on the Galactic Council. And a promise, written into galactic law, that no member species will ever attack another without facing the combined response of all? She paused. These are not requests. They are conditions. Kel nodded slowly. I will present your terms to the Council. I believe they will accept. They will accept, Yuna said, because they have no choice. We are not asking permission to join the galaxy. We are informing you that we have arrived. The transmission ended. For a long moment, the bridge was silent. Then Taiho began to laugh. It was the first time he had laughed in weeks. Something funny, Admiral? Yuna asked. Thought we were primitive, Taiho said. They thought we would die quietly. They had no idea what we are. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Velthri were licking their wounds, telling stories about the monsters from the third planet. Somewhere out there, the Council was scrambling to adjust to a new reality. Somewhere out there, a galaxy that had ignored humanity was suddenly paying very close attention. What do you think they see when they look at us now? Yuna asked softly. Taiho considered the question. He thought about Minjio, still fighting in the ruins. About Junho Beak, building a communication network that would connect Earth to the stars. About Doyon Shin, who had given everything so that others might live. About Hannah Yu, who had held humanity together when everything seemed lost. They see survivors, he said. They see fighters. They see a species that looked at extinction and refused to accept it. He turned to face his crew. Men and women who had lived through the worst days in human history, who had lost everything and found the strength to keep going. They see humanity, he said, and they are afraid. 6 months later, Earth was formally admitted to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kel cast the deciding vote, her voice steady as she spoke the words that would change history. Welcome to the galaxy, she said to the human delegation. May we never give you reason to regret this partnership. In the chamber, humans stood among aliens for the first time. Some were nervous. Some were angry. Some were simply exhausted, but all of them were proud. They had earned their place among the stars. Not through diplomacy or trade or peaceful exploration, through blood. Through fire, through the simple, stubborn refusal to die. And as the galaxy watched, holding its collective breath, humanity looked back with eyes that remembered everything. They had come to the stars not as victims, but as victors. Not as supplicants, but as equals. And somewhere, in the hearts of species that had never known fear, a new emotion was taking root. Respect, and just a little bit of terror.